joining us now, MSNBC congressional reporter Michael Schnell, NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hilliard, and Semaphore White House correspondent Shelby Talcott. Michael, any movement today?
Yeah, Katie, not really. Look, I will caveat that with the fact that both the House and Senate are out of session today in observance of Yom Kippur, the Jewish holiday, but still not a lot of action up here. We did hear from Speaker Mike Johnson and his leadership team a little bit earlier this morning, and they had stuck by the same talking points, arguing that the onus of this shutdown is on Democrats, and then the best way to reopen the government is to pass that House-passed continuing resolution that was crafted by Republicans. Listen to a taste of what Speaker Johnson had to say.
People say, why aren't you negotiating with Schumer and Jeffries? Because I quite literally have nothing to negotiate. There's nothing I can pull out of the bill that was a Republican priority to say, oh, we won't do that. Why don't you guys vote for it now? I don't have anything. I didn't put anything in it to send it over. I'm stunned. I'm stunned that they have decided to shut the government down and hurt people. It is on them 100%.
Now, Katie, we know that just agreeing to that Republican-crafted stopgap bill is a non-starter among the majority of Senate Democrats. Now, we are aware that some conversations are underway in a bipartisan fashion in the Senate about potentially finding an off-ramp to the current situation. We saw some of those huddles happening on the Senate floor yesterday. Senate Majority Leader John Thune said it was his understanding that they would continue today. But what that bipartisan off-ramp could be, that agreement to reopen the government, really remains elusive as of now. Now, what does the schedule for the next few days look like? The Senate is going to be back here in the Capitol tomorrow. They'll be holding a pair of votes, first on that Democratic-crafted stopgap that includes the Obamacare subsidies and other health care provisions. We're expecting that to fall short of the 60-vote threshold needed to move forward. Senate will also vote on that Republican-crafted stopgap again. Similarly, we expect that to fail as well. Then the path forward remains unlikely, though John Thune, saying this morning that he doesn't expect the Senate will remain in recess over the weekend, which, Katie, that means the shutdown could likely extend into next week.
Yeah, sounds like it. All right, so who is to blame for the shutdown, according to American voters? Here is a Washington Post text poll. 47% say Trump and the Republicans in Congress. 30% say Democrats in Congress. 23% not sure. This is 1,010 adults reached by text on October 1st. And then the other part of this, which is what this whole shutdown is about, these federal subsidies for health care. Here's what people say about that. 71% of the country wants to extend health care subsidies. 29% wants it ended as scheduled. It would end in January, and in some cases, premiums would triple to unaffordable highs for many Americans. Vaughn, where's the White House's head on that? Do these numbers stir them?
Apparently not, because we have not heard any indication that they have any intention of relenting. And I think if the president was worried about it, I don't think that he would have been so explicit as to welcome shutdowns. He's done it in the past, and then I think it's worth going back to just earlier this week. He has been very vocal, arguing that this is effectively, in some ways, an effective approach to cut down government. Take a listen.
We can do things during the shutdown that are irreversible, that are bad for them and irreversible by them, like cutting vast numbers of people out, cutting things that they like, cutting programs that they like. And you all know Russell Vought. He's become very popular recently because he can trim the budget to a level that you couldn't do any other way.
And so, well, you could say Capitol Hill, right, for a little analogy. They're figuring out how the restaurant should be run moving forward. And then meanwhile, Russ Vought and Donald Trump are in the kitchen with the active ingredients in deciding what to slice and dice here. And those two men are here meeting this afternoon to go through potential firings across agencies and potential cuts of projects. He's threatened 16 Democratic states, their green energy projects. He's threatened the tunnel that is being constructed here in New York, a subway transformation project. So there's a lot on the line. And frankly, until the government is reopened, the Office of Personnel Management, they sent out to agencies stating very specifically that the OMB director is the one who is empowered to determine which federal workers are accepted and able to work. And right now, they are making the case, the OMB director, that those who would be processing the firings are crucial workers and workers that should continue to work.
And Russ Vought has been dreaming about this since puberty, according to Utah Senator. Strange way to put it, but I guess that underscores how much he wants to slash the government. What's interesting, Shelby, is Donald Trump, listen, it's a risk, obviously, to shut down the government over anything. The Democrats are running that risk. They're hoping that banging on about health care subsidies right now as the exchanges open up for enrollment and as people are getting their notices for what next year's premiums are going to cost is going to make a difference. People are going to understand why they've shut down the government. At the same time, what I find puzzling is that when Donald Trump says, you know, if you do this, I'm going to have to permanently lay off people and it's going to be your fault. It's like he's saying, I'm going to punch a guy in the face. And if you don't stop me, if you don't stop my fist, then it's your fault I punched him. It seems like a gamble as well from the White House.
I think anytime there's a shutdown, there's a gamble. Both sides are taking a gamble. You never know ultimately who the American people are going to blame. But the White House is betting at the end of the day that Democrats are going to take the blame. And when I talk to White House officials, they remain confident in that. And they're not really hiding the ball with the fact that part of the result of this shutdown is that they want to, as a senior White House official described to me, force Democrats to understand the consequences of keeping the government closed. And so part of that, you're seeing these sort of cuts, you're seeing these initiatives that are targeting Democratic states. And they're not hiding the ball that these are programs that don't fit the administration's needs, as an administration official told me. And so they're using this shutdown as sort of an opportunity to continue some of those early on Doge-like cuts to continue shrinking the U.S. government.
Give me a little bit about more from your conversation with Senator Kramer about Russ Vought.
Right, yeah. Republicans are concerned about this. They're concerned that they're going to move too quickly and sort of lose the advantage that Republicans believe they had. So Senator Kramer told my colleagues that Russ is less politically in tune than the president, and that we as Republicans have never had so much moral high ground on a government funding bill in our lives. I don't see why we would squander it, which I think is the risk of being aggressive with executive power in this moment. And so you're hearing from Republicans who are sort of urging caution from Russ Vought on all of this. They want the government to take a little bit of a step back and maybe be less aggressive in their cuts because they're concerned that they're going to lose this, what they believe is a winning argument for the American people.
I mean, it's basically the risk that I was just talking about. Why is the White House getting in the way of just saying this is all the Democrats' fault? Why would the White House want to take it a step further and start permanently cutting jobs and then try to blame it on the other side when they're the ones that are in charge of those cuts? So, Michael, are you hearing similar sentiment on the Hill, or is Senator Kramer an outlier?
I think that by and large, we're seeing most Republicans back up President Trump and Russ Vought on this matter. Russ Vought actually spoke directly to House Republicans yesterday. I spoke to a number of members who were on that call, and they told me after that they are supportive of these reductions in force. A number of members had actually said that on the call themselves, according to people who were listening. We also heard from Speaker Mike Johnson this morning, who during that press conference was actually asked directly, are you concerned? You argue that Republicans have the upper hand in this shutdown and that Democrats will be to blame for the situation. Are you at all concerned that these firings and these mass layoffs will prompt that public opinion to change and for Republicans to actually take on more of the onus of the shutdown by the public? And Speaker Johnson said he's not concerned about that. He's not worried. He also actually said that constitutionally what the president and Russ Vought are doing is legal, saying that because the legislative branch is essentially shut down with Congress, with government not funded, the executive branch has those powers, and Russ Vought, as the director of the Office of Management and Budget, he says has wide discretion over what can be done during a shutdown. So the majority of Republicans we are seeing stand quite behind President Trump in this situation and argue that he's in the right for what he's doing. But I'm curious to see how those polls are going to shake out, because, again, these firings are going to impact what they're saying could be thousands of people.
This is obviously a gamble, you know, who's going to get blamed for it, because the midterms are coming up. I mean, they're not coming up, but we are about a year away, and people are going to start campaigning on it. The last time Donald Trump was in office during the midterms, the Democrats focused almost exclusively on health care, and they won back a majority in the midterm elections. And Donald Trump, you know, was investigated quite a bit. The focus on health care seems to be what they're trying to do now, and they're hoping for the same success.
Right. And actually, for the Republican angle of this, I think, right, you see the polling numbers. It doesn't make sense why they would so openly celebrate mass firings. At the same time, people like Russ Vought, I don't know if he's been doing it since puberty, had this vision, but at the same time, they've seen Donald Trump as a vessel. This is what their vision of an American government wants.
To make the government
and
smaller.
This, 2025 and 2026, is their moment. Right? Forget what happens next November. This is their window of opportunity, the next year, next 13 months, to go and reshape the American government. I was told back during the transition, Russ Vought, it wasn't clear whether he was going to be onboarded, but Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk were big proponents because they saw him as the portal to being able to actually execute the budgetary means to go and do what they knew that they would not be able to do independently through DOGE. They're no longer around. Russ Vought is, and he is the man who is carrying out this vision of the Heritage Foundation, the Center for Renewing America, all of these different right-wing groups. This is their moment.
They campaigned on it. There's no doubt about that.
Correct.
Yvonne Hilliard, always good to have you. Michael Schnell, good to have you as well. And you, Shelby Talcott.
We are getting new reports about a chilling and downright shocking escalation of ICE tactics against the residents of Chicago. In the middle of the night, hundreds of armed federal agents and police, backed up by riot trucks, smoke grenades, and helicopters, breached fences and busted doors in an immigration raid on an entire apartment building on the city's south side. They pulled dozens of residents from their homes and zip ties, including children, some of them without any clothes. They then held some outside for hours and dragged the others into rented vans.
It was scary because I've never had a gun put in my face.
Neighbors like Ebony Watson says they ducked for cover as they heard several flashbangs go off.
They was terrified. The kids was crying. People was screaming. They looked very distraught. I was out there crying when I seen the little girl come around the corner. Because they was bringing the kids out too. Had them zip tied to each other. One of them literally laughed. He was standing right here. He said, them kids.
They zip tied the kids together. ICE put out a statement saying they were pursuing Trinidad gang members, but U.S. citizens living in the building say they were detained too. The cops told them that if they had any unrelated warrants, they wouldn't be going back home. 37 people were ultimately arrested after agents separated children from their parents on the street. And if you're looking at this and asking yourself, how is this legal? That is the right question to ask. And it has kind of an answer. And to understand it, you have to go back to Los Angeles this summer, where federal immigration agents started pushing the envelope on orders from the White House. They raided Home Depot parking lots and Walmart lots, and they grabbed people they saw. Near one Home Depot, masked agents with batons grabbed Narcisco Barranco, who has lived in the U.S. for more than 30 years and has 3 sons serving in the Marine Corps. Agents beat Barranco on the ground, dislocating his shoulder before detaining him. In Van Nuys, agents raided a car wash, remembering this, sending patrons and workers scrambling before the 79-year-old owner, who is a U.S. citizen named Rafi, tried to ask them what they were doing.
That is when Rafi was taken down by agents and eventually handcuffed. Rafi says he was injured in the process.
And they sit on me. This is my elbow since a week ago. And this is my arm.
Rafi says he and 5 others at his car wash were taken to a federal detention center downtown. We're still working to learn more about why they were detained.
And that man is not alone.
Look how you got my hand. You're twisting that. I'm American, bro. Yo, these guys are literally based off of skin color. My homie was born here just because of the way he looks.
Agents kept stopping people they suspected of being undocumented immigrants for no reason other than they weren't obviously white. like Brian Gavidia, the man you saw there, the 29-year-old American. He wasn't arrested, but he says agents went through his phone for 20 minutes and kept his real ID card. Now, these are obvious violations of people's core constitutional civil rights, their right to equal protection and the freedom from unlawful searches and seizures. And victims filed a class action lawsuit. And after an entire bench trial, a federal judge sided with those victims and ended the ICE sweeps. And in her ruling, she wrote, "It is illegal to conduct roving patrols which identify people based upon race alone, aggressively question them, and then detain them without a warrant, without their consent, and without reasonable suspicion that they are with status." Yes, it is. Yes, it is. An appeals court upheld her injunction against ICE. You have to stop doing this. And so the Trump administration took the issue to the Supreme Court. And lo and behold, last month, the court's 6-3 conservative majority voted to just let Trump and ICE continue for now, as the case works its way up, to use racial profiling in their immigration raids, halting the lower court's decision, saying, go ahead. Now, they gave no reasoning or explanation for their decision, silent, except Justice Brett Kavanaugh, who wrote a short concurring opinion saying there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with racially motivated stops by law enforcement. Quote, "If the officers learn the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the U.S., they promptly let the individual go." Welcome to the era of what critics call the Kavanaugh stop. Carte blanche for ICE to continue violent, warrantless raids and stops all over the country to undocumented immigrants, lawful residents, and American citizens alike, like Leonardo Garcia Venegas. You see him there, being cuffed roughly by ICE agents on a construction site where he was working. Vargas showed the agents his real ID as proof of citizenship, and they told him he was lying. And it took hours to get him out of custody, so not exactly expeditious. And then, get this, 2 weeks later, ICE arrested him again at another work site. He's now suing the government. The consequence of all this is what we're seeing now in the dead of night in Chicago. Dozens of federal agents raiding an entire apartment building with kids in it just to see what they can find. It's the most egregious abuse of our basic rights as Americans I've seen in a long time, maybe my lifetime. And it comes 2 weeks after Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem posted a hype video of another violent ICE raid with helicopters and grenades, this time on a house in the Chicago suburbs. And guess what? 2 U.S. citizens were mistakenly arrested. You know, there's a reason the American founders put the right to be free from unlawful searches and seizures in the Bill of Rights from the start. Masked secret police profiling people and now targeting entire apartment buildings, making everyone prove they're not guilty of something, is the province of tyrants. It is the opposite of American. And I don't think Americans will stand for it, nor should they.
We start tonight, though, with the shutdown in Washington, D.C., which Donald Trump is trying to use to maximize pain and punish political foes. That's how the New York Times put it, as Trump forges ahead with plans to conduct mass layoffs. Permanent firings have never happened before in a government shutdown. Now, though, senior government officials are privately warning that there will be firings and against those firings, advising the administration that they would be unlawful. Today, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt seemed unbothered by the prospect of mass federal terminations.
Can you give us an estimate on the amount of federal workers that the Trump administration wants to fire during the government shutdown? Are we talking hundreds? Are we talking thousands?
Look, it's likely going to be in the thousands.
New polling shows that when it comes to casting blame for the shutdown, more Americans are pointing to the Republicans than to the Democrats, 47% to 30%, according to the Post. And Politico is reporting that a bipartisan group of lawmakers is quietly meeting, searching for a way out of all of this. But today, Speaker Johnson seemed to throw cold water on the prospect of negotiations. Take a listen.
There is no gimmick. People say, why aren't you negotiating with Schumer and Jeffries? Because I quite literally have nothing to negotiate.
Joining me now to discuss all of this is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Leader Jeffries, thanks for joining us. What can you tell us about where we are with these negotiations? Apparently, there is nothing to discuss.
Well, good evening, Melissa. Great to be with you, and that's exactly right. Since the White House meeting that took place on Monday, Republicans have gone radio silent. It's clear that they wanted to shut this government down, and they wanted to shut it down because they were unwilling to provide health care to working class Americans. Our position remains the same. We're ready, we're willing, we're able to sit down with anyone, anytime, any place here at the Capitol or back at the White House to have a conversation about reopening the government in the midst of this Trump shutdown, finding a bipartisan path toward reaching a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people, and making sure that we address the Republican health care crisis, which is devastating people all across the country.
Right, can we talk a little bit about what you just said? The Democrats have been very clear in their messaging. You are emphasizing that this shutdown is about the Republicans refusing to restore health care funding. But some have argued that it would be equally compelling for the party to say that it is refusing to fund an administration and government that is bent on abusing its power. Why focus exclusively on health care? Why not carry both messages forward?
Well, in the legislation that we introduced as part of our democratic approach related to avoiding a shutdown, or in this instance now reopening it, we made clear two things. That we're faced with a massive Republican health care crisis related to the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health clinics are closing all across the country, including in rural America. And now Republicans are refusing to renew the Affordable Care Act tax credits for working class Americans, everyday Americans, and those who are struggling in this Trump economy where life has already become far too expensive. And so we believe that health care is a central issue. Republicans have said it's an extraneous issue. At the same time, in the Democratic proposal to continue funding, we've also indicated that we can't simply proceed as if this is business as usual. If we reach a bipartisan agreement, then we've got to make sure there are enforceability mechanisms to ensure that the agreement that was reached is actually kept and that the Trump administration follows the law.
There's going to be a lot of pain here, not just in the area of health care. We are hearing that the administration is preparing for mass permanent firings. Just want to remind everyone that Project 2025, the GOP blueprint for the second Trump presidency, was unabashed in its desire to remake the federal government, including proposing massive cuts to the federal workforce. An architect of Project 2025, Russ Vought, is now the head of the White House Office of Management and Budget, and that's the group that's driving these planned firings. I'm going to play a tape of Speaker Johnson responding to questions about Vought's role in all of this, as well as tape of what Vought had to say before the election. Here it is.
Russ does this reluctantly. We had a 45-minute telephone conference with him yesterday. He talked to all the House Republicans. He takes no pleasure in this.
We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. We want to put them in trauma.
Speaker, do you believe that Speaker Jeffrey is correct that this is not what Russ Vought wanted to do? Or does it seem like maybe this shutdown was a convenient vehicle for stripping down the federal government, and this is perhaps what they wanted all along?
Well, Donald Trump and Republicans definitively wanted to shut down the government. For them, cruelty is the point. But as it relates to mass firings, we've seen them engage in mass firings from the very beginning of this administration. And so to the extent that they continue to proceed down this road in the context of the government shutdown, they'll simply use it as a pretense. But this is what they've wanted to do all along. But the American people are paying close attention. They know that Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They've shut this government down. Democrats are very clear. We want to reopen it. We stand by hardworking federal civil servants. We want to find a bipartisan path forward, but it's got to be an agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people in terms of their health, their safety, and their economic well-being in an environment where the Trump economy is increasing costs on everyday Americans by thousands of dollars a year, and now, because of their refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, more than 20 million Americans are about to experience dramatically increased premiums, copays, and deductibles. That's unacceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world.
I'm glad you mentioned that the Republicans not only control the White House, but both chambers of Congress, and that puts Donald Trump right at the center of all of this. Earlier this week, your colleague, Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, confronted Speaker Johnson about the president. Take a listen.
The president is unhinged. He is unwell. What
a lot
are you
of folks
doing?
on your side are too. I don't control.
Oh my
them.
God, please. That performance in front of the generals, that
I didn't see it.
is so dangerous. You know I serve on Foreign Affairs and Appropriations. This is a collision of those two things. Our allies are looking elsewhere. Our enemies are laughing.
I just left
You
the
have a
Speaker's
president
side.
who is you have a president who is unwell.
Notably, Speaker Johnson doesn't actually deny the idea that President Trump is unwell. What do you make of that?
Well, the Speaker was clearly uncomfortable by that conversation, and Representative Dean always speaks truth to power. And here's the reality. We had a White House meeting. Subsequent to that meeting, the behavior that we've seen from Donald Trump has been unhinged and out of control, and clearly unserious at a moment when we should be actually conducting ourselves in a way to try to find a path forward. But their behavior demonstrates the fact that they wanted to shut this government down. They thought they could break the will of House and Senate Democrats. That's not happening. And it's not happening because we're standing up for everyday Americans. Cancel the cuts, lower the costs, save health care.
In terms of who will be impacted most by this, Politico is reporting, quote, that these cuts will impact 16 states, including New York, all of which voted for former Vice President Kamala Harris. Russ Vought has not publicly announced cuts that would affect a state that backed Trump in 2024. Leader Jeffries, is the pain of this shutdown going to be disproportionately borne by those in blue states? Is that the point of all of this?
I don't think that, in fact, is the case. And what we've actually seen throughout this Trump administration is that the pain that they've inflicted on the American people, the chaos, the extremism that has been unleashed on the American people is impacting everyone. Their one big ugly bill, which every single Democrat in the House and the Senate opposed, largest cut to Medicaid in American history. They ripped food out of the mouths of children, seniors, and veterans. And all of this was done so they could provide massive permanent tax breaks to their billionaire donors, to the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, to subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless. And they did it at the expense of working-class Americans in blue states, in red states, and in purple states. And the pain that they will try to inflict on the American people in the context of this Trump Republican shutdown will impact everyone.
All right, before we let you go, Leader Jeffries, The Times is reporting that Trump has, quote, determined that we are in a war against drug cartels. And as you know, only Congress has the power to declare war. Are there any conversations ongoing among your colleagues about the extrajudicial killings that this administration has recently carried out in international waters and this new claim to war powers?
Yes, and those conversations are being led by Greg Meeks, the top Democrat on Foreign Affairs, Adam Smith, the top Democrat on Armed Services, and Jim Himes, the top Democrat on the Intel Committee, all of whom will continue to speak out forcefully and aggressively in defense of the Article 1 power as the only branch of government that can declare war. I support those efforts entirely, and pushing back against, another instance of executive overreach. And unfortunately, what we see from our House Republican colleagues is that they continue to behave as nothing more than a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda.
Pam Bondi and Pete Hegseth spoke to National Guard troops newly deployed in the city to effectively replace local police forces. Also there, Stephen Miller, who has no official law enforcement role in the administration. But listen to how these officials spoke about the work of these federal troops. Now remember, they're talking to these troops in an American city about American citizens.
I see the guns and badges in this room. You are unleashed. The handcuffs that you're carrying, they're not on you anymore. They're on the criminals. And whatever you need to get it done, we're going to get it done. They think that they're hardcore. We are so much more hardcore than they are. And we have the entire weight of the United States government behind us. We're not here to second guess you. We're here to have your back, to unleash you, to do your job so you come home safely.
To unleash you. The language is even starker when you consider that just days ago, Trump told military commanders they would need to confront the, quote, enemy from within. As I write for MSNBC.com, Trump and Hegseth's speeches that day were a disgrace, a violation of the sacred line between civilian control and military professionalism. Joining us now, MSNBC political analyst and host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller, and retired D.C. police officer Michael Fanone. He's now a spokesman and advisory board member of Home of the Brave, an organization pushing back against Trump's attacks on democracy, and author of Hold the Line, The Insurrection and One Cop's Battle for America's Soul.
Language matters. I think the specific language that is being used, unleashed, it is not an accident. And I think the president talking about the enemies within is a very specific, it's not just a wink or a nod, it is a clarion call. Officer Fanone, I'm wondering what you think, hearing what the president has said over the last couple of days, but also that clip from Stephen Miller, and talking about really the militarization of local police departments aided and abetted by the National Guard.
Yeah, I think Stephen Miller is an unhinged nerd. And I would venture to say that most law enforcement officers in this country don't take him seriously. And I want to say that saying things like that, while it is incendiary and it's disgusting and it's disgraceful, the policies and procedures that exist in American law enforcement agencies across this country at the state and local level are so ingrained in their officers that listening to, a propaganda speech by Stephen Miller is not going to change the way that those officers, for the most part, conduct their business. What I do worry about is that this is a advertisement or a promotional video for new hires. People that are coming into the career of law enforcement under this administration who see the brutality, who see the state-sponsored violence, and are attracted to that, and hear things like, take the gloves off. When they spit, we hit. And, you are unleashed. That's what concerns me, is the future of law enforcement in this country and what who is going to be attracted to that profession.
Tim, I think that Officer Fanone makes such a incisive point there, right? That this is really about recruiting new folks who want to join the fight. Because if this were simply about normalizing the use of military forces in American cities, then one could argue they should be playing it cool. Right? They should be going in. They should let the action speak for itself. It is almost as though they cannot contain themselves and allow the action to simply speak for itself. They have to narrate what is happening.
Yeah, it's intimidation theater, right? Like, that's what that is. I mean, Hegseth was a weekend talk show host, so, like, that's what he knows, theater, and that's what you can tell Stephen Miller's trying to do to sort of butch himself up. And I'm with Fanone. Look, and he said that the policies and procedures are ingrained in our local police departments, and obviously he's going to know that better than me, and I trust that. This is the issue, though, is that it is intentionally a recruitment effort. Like, they have the resources now for recruitment. I mean, the ICE amount of funding that's going to ICE, if the government, ever starts working again, is going to be greater than the State Department. It's like greater than the Israel military, the amount of money is going to ICE. So they got to recruit and bring in a bunch of new people. And the new people they're bringing in, they're trying to draw the types of people that want to be unleashed, that want to go after the enemy within. And I think that's the ominous part about this. And if you look at Trump's, the one thing I just want to add to the quote you played from Trump is he doesn't just say that we have an enemy within. He says that the enemy within is more dangerous than the foreign enemy. And you don't know who they are because they're not wearing uniforms. It could be anybody. Like, that is just laying the groundwork for these new recruits, or maybe existing people that are on board with that, to come in and start roughing people up, start treating people like enemy combatants. And I think it's a legitimate thing for folks to be worried about. I'm worried about it as we're kind of talking today in New Orleans. There's news that they're going to be sending troops into New Orleans, I think, imminently too, on top of Memphis and the other cities that have been mentioned.